Hi, I'm Jordan Mercer, and I am the 6-time Molokai to Oahu World Paddleboard Champion and the current Nutri-Grain Ironwoman Series champ. You're here and you're listening to the Physical Performance Show.
And the winner is...
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Listeners, welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show where we take a behind-the-scenes look into the lives of the world's most inspiring physical performers. Today on the show, I catch up with Jordan Mercer. Jordan's the 6 times Molokai board paddle champion. She's also the current Nutri-Grain Ironwoman Series champion, taking her debut title in the 2015-2016 Surf Series on the beach in spectacular fashion in Cronulla. I hope you got to listen to episode 28 featuring Barney and Kate Miller and their incredible story of overcoming. If you haven't yet had a listen, jump back, take a listen to episode 28. But right now, let's jump into episode 29 of the Physical Performance Show featuring Jordan Mercer. So Jordan, or Jordy Mercer, as those who know you tend to call you, or there's also a nickname I believe I want to ask you about today called Magic. But what's something the world Jordy would find interesting about you?
Well, apart from, I guess, everything that people see from my day-to-day life as a professional athlete, I really enjoy music. I like listening to music, playing a bit of guitar, and when not many people are around or pretty much by myself, I don't mind freestyle rapping. That tends to get me fired up for races or just get some of those bad thoughts or energy out. Just a bit of freestyle rapping. So
I've got to ask about this. So you will actually your own rap. So you'll just get one of your favourite artists, on the headphones and dig into that.
Yeah. That's pretty much how it goes. I've dug myself a hole here, but yes, I'll get YouTube their music backing track, and from there I'll sort of just speak my mind and pretend that I'm a bit of a rock star for a little while.
Well, you are. Is there any shadow boxing that goes with this, Jordy?
Yeah, not too far from it, actually. I don't mind a bit of boxing cross-training.
So if we see you with the headphones on the beach this coming summer, we'll know what you're doing.
Yes, the secret's out.
And any favourite artists?
I really enjoy like a wide range of, I guess, music genres, but I've just dobbed myself in for the freestyle rap, but I also really love country music. So I guess the current stuff, a little bit of old rock, but yeah, I like country music too. Country
music and rap, that's a potent combination. Any country artists? I've got to ask you that one. Keith Urban? You have to say Keith Urban, up in Queensland.
I know, Keith was actually the way I got introduced to country music, and from there I guess I just try and find the country stations and not too fussy. A little bit of anything is fine.
So I've got to ask, have you tried to play musical instruments through did you try and play any instruments through school?
Well, when I was really young, I think that maybe year 2 or 3, I played the violin with a group of girls from school, and I can tell you that Mum and Dad were pretty happy the day I said, I think I've had enough of the violin.
The sports career was calling, right? I have a theory, Jordy, that athletes, excluding 1 or 2 that I've come across over the years, they generally can't sing. Have you come across that too?
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to give myself a rap or much credit for my singing. I prefer to do that when not many people are listening.
Yeah, well, you're gifted in other ways. So Jordy, take us through. We've got a lot to cover today, and I've been looking forward to having this session and time with you. But take us through your genesis story in surf. Or even before that, in my research, I came across something I didn't know about about yourself and what's now your budding surf career, but that was that you had a start in gymnastics and athletics.
Yeah, so for me, I guess gymnastics was the first sport that I really tried at, and that came from Mum's influence. She was a gymnast, and then through my early childhood, she was a gymnastics coach. So I did gymnastics, and obviously at the time, Dad was a professional Ironman, so we spent a lot of time down the beach. And yeah, it wasn't until I was 12 that I was offered a position at the AIS down in Canberra to train for the upcoming Comm Games, Olympics as a gymnast, and already doing a fair bit of nipper work, but spending most of my time on the sand rather than being out there in the surf. I definitely had to, at that point, make a decision. Was I ready to say goodbye to the coastal lifestyle and the friends that I had made through surf lifesaving and the running that I enjoyed doing on the side? And yeah, that was, I guess, a pretty big call at a young age. But from there, I guess a little bit more time and effort was given to surf until I eventually chose to put it all in for that sport.
So, Geordie, I actually, through my physio studies, have spent time at the AIS and working with inside the physio department there, and being privy to the routine of the gymnasts on residence at the AIS. And I mean, I was going through my studies at this time, and I was just, used to the demands of sport, but I had a whole nother level of appreciation for the gymnasts, their routines. It's in that, that hall just all day, every day, unrelenting. It's extraordinary. So for you, that would have meant giving up your, coastal lifestyle with your father, Darren, who's, one of the legends of surf lifesaving, Darren Mercer. Giving up that lifestyle and what was already, I imagine, some of your successes on the sand events, in surf, and heading off to cold Canberra. So did you wrestle with that decision for a while, or was it really something that you knew in your heart of hearts just wasn't going to be for you, even though evidently you were clearly talented enough to be, earmarked to go and have a scholarship?
Well, I guess it definitely started off with all intentions of making it through the qualification and the final cut of, I think it came down to 3 from the hundreds of girls that they'd chosen, and I was scouted just through some of the state gymnastics events that I'd done, and then it was an invitation then to do I think it was a week trial there at the AIS, and from there they cut down, and we were then invited back again, and then from there scaled down again, obviously, and they were left with a final of 3 girls, I believe, that they chose. So all intentions were of aiming and striving for a position there at the AIS, and we were successful. But I guess when it came to making the decision and truly looking at what the future would hold for me and what the future with our family would look like, that was then a decision that I definitely made for what I think maybe truly made me happy and for the future that I hope to have.
Yeah. Isn't that an interesting insight that in life we can be presented with a couple of options that might all be good, but there might be one that's just more aligned with how we're engineered as people, So could have you ever imagined as that 13-year-old girl, Geordie, that you would be experiencing the success that you now are as a 22-year-old?
Oh, definitely not in the realm of surf lifesaving and ocean sports, that's for sure. I think back then, unlike a lot of my now current competitors in the surf series, I didn't do a lot of swimming, and it was because I really didn't enjoy it and I wasn't that good at it. And I loved my running, so I think as a gymnast, it gave me an advantage doing my athletics and cross country right the way through school. But then in any sport that I tried, I always knew that gymnastics helped me. It was almost just having that advantage as a child to have the strength, dedication, I guess, and then flexibility and the knowledge of looking after your body it set me up, I guess, for life, but definitely sports into the future.
Yeah, wow. So at this point, you were down on the in Thirroul, right, New South Wales?
Yes. Made the move to Queensland when I was 5, almost 6. So I started school here in Queensland, and obviously then gymnastics through school while we were living in Queensland.
So who do you support in the state of origin, Geordie?
Oh, this is a sore point with my boyfriend, actually. I go for the blues because, number one, it's my favourite colour, and number two, that's where I come from. And, I miss my grandparents and a lot of my family back down there. And although I've actually never represented New South Wales.
So isn't that interesting? I mean, I was born in New South Wales, but always went for Queensland. So when I moved to Queensland, it felt like I'd sort of in some ways come home. So state of origin, hey, there's always a story or two. So Geordie, what would you rate as your, before we go to that, growing up, what was it like growing up in your home? Your mum was, from what I can read, a gymnast and a coach as well, and Dad was off racing in the professional series, what was then the Uncle Toby's series, and also the split Nutrigrain series. I think your father was more in the Nutrigrain, wasn't he, right through those years? What was life like for you as a child?
Well, sport was always a very big part of my life, and my younger sister Maddie, she's 2.5 years younger than me, so with the two girls and mum and dad, I think that we were always surrounded by sport, and I guess we're so blessed and lucky to have grown up with very supportive parents. So it was pretty much anything we wanted to try or do, we were taken very good care of, and there was a lot of love in our home. But from as long as I can remember, I've always trained almost morning and afternoon before school right the way through, and gymnastics was pretty much my life, and as that sport is, as you said before, it's really consuming. And I was lucky, I think, that I almost had the outlet of the Sunday nippers and the surf life saving, because I met friends through there that I guess at the end of the day helped me make that decision to move forward with surf sports. But yeah, it's always been I always remember I was incredibly and probably far too competitive for what I needed to be from a young age, and that came about before I knew that there was going to be pressure that my dad was a champion Ironman. It was obviously something that came from within, and yeah, my natural instinct was to be the best at everything I possibly could be.
So Geordie, any examples of that competitive spirit growing up that spring to mind? Maybe yourself and your sister Maddie?
Yeah, I think the first one was definitely school cross country, and it was surely the first running race I think I've ever done. But year one cross country, I remember just being on the start line, and no pressure was really given to me from mum or dad that I had to go out there and race my absolute heart out and do my best. But it's exactly what I wanted to do. So there's actually a photo that I'm starting on the start line and my elbows are out like I'm a front row forward in some kind of rugby game, and there was no way no one was getting the jump on me from the beginning of that race. So yeah, pretty relentless and competitive.
So that was and then it's just gone on from there, hasn't it? So Geordie, you qualified for the Nutrigrain series, the professional series here in Australia for overseas listeners, Surf Life Saving Series, as a 16-year-old. From my knowledge, one of the youngest, if not the youngest, to have ever qualified for the series. What was it like pulling the togs on with Mercer on your togs for the first time, first round? Can you remember that round of the series?
Yes, I can. And even more clearly, I can remember the qualification weekend where it was my first opportunity, and just I never in my life, in a sporting sense, had wanted anything more than I did on that weekend than to qualify for the series. I was so ready mentally and in my heart that I wanted to be a part of the professional series, that maybe physically I didn't have the best chance of making it in and making that top cut, but it's pretty incredible the power that the mind has and the will if you truly do believe and you want something. So I stepped up and made the cut there, and putting the togs on. I think the first round was at Currumbin on the Gold Coast, actually, my first Ironwoman series race, and it was really windy, pretty tricky conditions. I hadn't been on the ski for all that long, and a bit of an endurance-based format, actually, so it suited me at that young age. But I think I got kind of overwhelmed by everything that was going on, and I was definitely took me a little bit of time after that to mellow down and refocus into the second round. I from the early stages learned that there was a whole lot more for me to learn.
So that was your initiation, and then Geordie, off the back of that, you've now been part of the professional series for. It was last year or this summer series that's just gone, which we'll talk about in a moment. Was that your third series or second?
It was actually my fifth or sixth series. So every year since 2011 or 2010, I qualified, and since then I've been a part of the series.
And so therein shows why I'm a physio and not a mathematician. As I said that, I'm like, hold on, qualified at 16, that's going to be 5 series. So Geordie, take us through thus far the most memorable moment, leaving out what we'll get to in a moment, which is your debut series title, taking that out for the 2015-2016 series on the beach at Cronulla this year. What's the most memorable race you've got, leaving out this latest iteration of the series where you were the series champion?
Well, the most incredible. I think I'm going wrong with this answer. Am I allowed to include this series?
I like how you're bargaining this, Geordie. Look, let's throw it wide open. In your whole time in the professional Nutrigrain series, what's been your most memorable moment? Most memorable round?
Okay, that within the series, my most memorable race, and probably of my entire career, coming pretty close to one of my Molokai Paddleboard Championship victories. It was round 2 with this series of the Nutrigrain. We're at Coolum Beach, which is relatively close to where I live at Noosa, so pretty much a home round, as close as we got to home for that series. And the day before, I'd raced probably one of the better races I've had within the series, and I just had a lot of confidence in how I was moving on the ski, on the board, and swimming relatively well, keeping up with the girls, and just feeling so fit and strong through my transitions. And things just didn't quite go my way with the ocean on that Saturday, but I took away a lot of confidence. So Sunday, round 2 that was the first, my maiden Ironwoman series victory in the round 2. So I just, had been working toward a series win for 5 years. It was my 5th series, and there's a lot of racing in between that. And as you know, there's a whole lot of hard work that goes into it, where on your mind and in your heart, you're thinking about wanting to achieve that. So that race win was like nothing I expected to feel like, and it was hands down just the most genuinely complete I felt. It was just the best. Pretty emotional.
Well, because you're not far from home, just down the, literally, as we say in Australia, just down the road, and lots of a fan base there. I was on the beach that day, actually. I was on the beach on the Sunday, but special for you. Did you know at that point that series was going to be a special series for you?
Yeah, I felt as though after I had won that race that I was really capable to just keep winning. Maybe it was that I finally cracked the top of the podium there, and it just gave me the confidence and the self-belief that, I've done it now. I can do it again. There's no reason why I can't do it again. I've never been feeling this good in my racing, and it was just so incredible that I wanted that feeling again. But I think where I sort of came unstuck was that the best way I can sort of explain it is that for 4 years, Olympic athletes work towards the main event, and it is the Olympics. And after such a high and working towards that, just relentlessly for 4 years, once you achieve that, it's almost like a lot of relief, and you sort of just almost let go. And that's how I felt. Only round 2 out of a 6-round series, and obviously there was still a lot of work to be done, but the next round 3 and 4, I really had to work on a lot of things. I was just so mentally, I feel like maybe relieved or just exhausted and drained that 5 years had gone into the making of getting that win. And it took me a long time to, I guess, remotivate, shift my focus, and get back into that series so that I could still chase the title win.
Yeah, and up to that point, that first round win, round 2, this most recent summer series, had there been some occasions where you'd come tantalisingly close?
There certainly had been, and whether it was just something in my mind that had shifted from that obsessive first place that I wanted to chase for, in my earlier series, I had to come to a point where it was like, and talking to Dad as well, I was just obsessed with wanting to be the Ironwoman series champion, and I was looking at the end result rather than focusing on the process of what I needed to do each leg of each round to complete one series. So I think shifting my focus and saying that, okay, to win a series, I can be consistent and place incredibly well. It's not all about having to win every round. So I think that's why that in the couple of years leading up to this big season win, I had incredibly close moments and amazing races where I feel like I definitely could have cracked a win, but in my mind, maybe I didn't feel like comfortable in that position. And sounds kind of crazy, but that's the best way I can sort of explain the way I was feeling for a couple of seasons before this series win.
As in comfortable, Geordie, in the position of taking the podium, or comfortable in the position of allowing yourself to really mix it for the overall series win?
I think even just leading a race, for me, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm in front. Now when's somebody going to come and swim past me, and it was just, I guess, the way I started looking at my series racing, and it didn't help me very much, but I certainly learnt a lot. There was a number of races that I'd finish and have a lot of seconds and a lot of thirds. So being on the podium fairly consistently throughout the series, but just that number one and that leading the race, feeling like that it's where I deserve to be, it's where I need to be. It was just like I felt like it had been so hard to crack that win that it was just going to be that hard to finish the race in first. It was kind of crazy.
That's cool. And then you did your now customary backflip off the podium, and now I understand that that's the gymnastics background. It makes it even it makes more sense, and it's very impressive though, Geordie. It's the best victory salute I've seen from an Ironman, full stop, in my 35 years of living. So well done. I look forward to seeing more of those, mind you, for the coming series. But Geordie, you mentioned training there. We're going to come back to this most recent series victory and also Molokai and some of your events and significant achievements. But you mentioned training, that you've always liked to train morning and afternoon. Is there a training mantra that you've regularly got repeating in your head when you get up early in the morning and get back in the water again in the afternoon? What's one training mantra, or a couple you might have, where you just regularly would tell yourself, okay, Geordie, is there any you've got?
Yeah, I think that definitely of late I've recognised just how crucial your mindset is, and I think coming off the high of a lot of events and only having a few weeks to then sort of recover and train up for another race, there's been times in training where I found it really tough to be my usual relentless and ready for the grind self as a trainer and an athlete. So it's funny you say that, because lately I have sort of been, I guess, repeating a couple of mantras in my mind, and just probably actually also a little bit of freestyle rapping. Sort of.
It'd have to be motivational freestyle rapping, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it is. I just sort of try and give myself a bit of kudos, and I don't really like bragging or gloating. I've never felt comfortable it's sort of doing things like that, but I've finally come to terms with the fact that it's okay. Nobody can hear what's going on in my head. And if I'm talking to myself kindly, it makes me feel better. So
you're prepared to share the mantras to the listeners of the Physical Performance Show, Geordie? Or one of them?
Gosh, I don't know. We're going to need a backing track. Can you give me a beat or something?
Oh, geez, you'd be stretching the friendship there.
Just little things of even just talking to myself really kindly and finding it hard. I've gone through a really rough patch, feeling incredibly fatigued after what's been a tough couple of months of racing, and I found myself out there when, I'm really just off the pace of where I want to be, and kindly talking to myself, saying things like, "You're doing great, Geordie, like, good girl, you're stronger than you were yesterday." And it's really funny. It's like a voice that I often wouldn't use when talking to myself, but it's funny. I've just, without sort of focusing on it or anyone telling me to do so, all of a sudden I've started to just bring this into my training, and I found that it calms me, and it helps me just sort of recognize where I'm at and what I need to be doing. Yeah, it's great. It's interesting, Geordie. A previous guest on the show, Craig Mottram, 5 times Australian Olympian distance runner, who you know, Craig mentioned, I asked him, at the Olympic level, on the track in a final, 5,000 metre final, what's going through your head? And his answer was hilarious. He said, I remember thinking on the start line, have I brushed my teeth? But the one point that he made, Geordie, is that, at that Olympic, that elite level in any sport, it's, the physical abilities are kind of, fairly consistent, but it's, the thinking, it's the psychology, really establishes people as being good or great. So that's interesting. Geordie, what's a typical training week look like in the life of Jordan Mercer? Yeah, so at the moment I'm focused on training for the Summer of Surf series, which will eventually finish off with the Nutri-Rain series. And for me, I've just said goodbye to the endurance part of my calendar, and so now the training for me is of a morning I'm at the pool and swimming there for an hour and a half to 2 hours, and that kicks off at 5:30, and I generally sort of ride my bike down to the pool. It's not all that far away for me, and from the pool I then head straight to the gym, and I've through the series and to now I've been training at F45, that functional fitness in the gym. So generally 45 minutes worth of effort, but got an hour session there, and then I come home, have my breakfast, and utilize that time during the middle of the day to talk to the people I need to, the contacts and different things, get on top of the emails and whatnot. And then in the afternoon I am generally 2 to sort of 3 sessions. I'm working through a bit of an injury at the moment, but I'm running, and that's either on the road there or sometimes a little bit of interval work on the sand. But more often now I'm on a grass track doing some track sessions, and then every afternoon I'm in the ocean, and that's on my board ski or swimming in the ocean or putting it all together for an Ironwoman session. So 3 to 4 sessions a day. Yeah, and any rest days through that week, Geordie? Sunday for me is usually Sunday fun day, where I enjoy just getting out in the ocean and trying to remind myself that I really actually do enjoy, love and appreciate my place of work, because it's kind of hard, always been in so much pain in such a place that I appreciate and love. So Sunday usually a bit of a surf or a light run, but yeah, 1 day a week is my Sunday cruisy day. Yeah, and for listeners, Jordan trains in Noosa, Queensland, which is one of the most picturesque beaches I think in the world. It's absolutely beautiful. So it's that paradox, hey Geordie, you're out there pushing your body to the limits, but you're surrounded by absolute beauty. I know, and it's helped me through some pretty incredibly tough training blocks, that's for sure. I think a lot of the Molokai training I do, which is a 55-kilometre board paddle that I paddle from Molokai Island back to Oahu, and I need to pretty much make up that distance in a fair few of my sessions. So there's a lot of lonely, hard yards out there, but I do find myself every now and then just reminding myself to look up and realize that there's no place that I'd actually rather be.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You're doing some Ks in preparing. We'll go to Molokai in a moment. With the training for, an event such as Molokai, where it's a 55-kilometre board paddle, between islands in Hawaii, a bit of an iconic event. Has there been a really scary moment ever spending all that time in the surf? I like to ask any of the surf guests on the show, Geordie, obviously the classical shark stories, but has there been any moments out there paddling by yourself or, close encounters of the shark species kind?
I'm unfortunately actually... Well, probably fortunately as well, don't have many crazy shark stories to tell you. I mean, I've got some pretty special encounters that I've had with dolphins that have been training partners for stints along my paddles along the coast and things, but whales as well. I think my scariest stories out in the ocean are pretty much when I've got myself to deal with and my own mind to sort of with. I'm not worried about losing a limb by a shark coming up, but I'm worried about absolutely losing my mind. Just
different type of injury.
Yes, for sure. But there's been moments where I've been pretty scared and definitely intimidated just by the sheer power of the ocean, being out very far off the coast and anywhere from land, just being caught in horrible weather, a bad storm, or even times where I've had paddlebacks and you lose sight of the people that you're training with and that you're out there with, and a lot of the time they're on skis and I'm on my board training for Molokai, and skis move a lot faster. So I've had moments out there where you're paddling through the big schools of bait fish and you know that there's bigger creatures beneath that, but it's just pretty incredible places that my mind sort of goes to, and I've had some pretty tough challenges and hurdles to overcome mentally out in the middle of nowhere.
So, Geordie, before we move off the training, what's your sleep routine like? Do you place a premium on sleep as a recovery tool?
Yes, it's something that I actually of late have made a deal with myself that I'm going to try and get to bed a little earlier, and just so that every time the alarm goes off in the morning, I don't feel dead to the world, like how could I possibly kick off another day of what was yesterday. So I'm going to try and get to bed a little earlier. But for me, if I can ever sneak in a midday nap, I am a sucker for a nana nap. Like it makes, I think, the training regime seem possible on a lot of days.
So, well, that's good to hear. I mean, it's a true recovery tool. Geordie, Molokai, we've mentioned it a few times. Just explain to listeners who aren't familiar with the event what the event entails.
So it's known as the Molokai to Oahu World Paddleboard Champs, and it's held in July in Hawaii. And you paddle from Molokai Island, which is a rather small and pretty remote island of the Hawaiian chain, and you paddle back to the very well-known Oahu, where you have Waikiki, and then on the north side, the North Shore, where there's pipeline and things. So the channel that we're paddling across is called the Kahivi Channel, which actually means the Channel of Bones, and it's named that just because it's one of the most treacherous bodies of water that there is in the world, and for the lives that have been lost out in the channel from years gone by. And I guess the race being so iconic because of the history that the Kahivi Channel holds, with Eddie Aukai, one of the most well-known watermen in the world, actually was caught out there on the Hakaleu, a big sailing ship, and went in a big storm to seek rescue and was never seen again. So, yeah, it's a body of water with a lot of history, and I think a race that definitely has a pretty incredible energy around it.
Yeah, and Geordie, you've gone on to win that event 5 times.
Oh, yes. Actually, I think this year was my 6th.
6, sorry. I might have read some out-of-date information. So 6 titles.
Well, I could put myself up. No, but it is 6. I went on 6 this year.
Let's agree to let each other off the hook for maths, but let's commit to getting results accurate. So Geordie, 6 titles, incredible 55 kilometres of paddling. What's the quickest time you've done the journey in?
So my quickest time was 5 hours and 22 minutes and 31 seconds. And I actually set that record in my maiden crossing. It was in 2011, and it was the first time I've ever crossed the channel, and I've been chasing that time ever since, and I haven't managed to beat my world record that I set.
So you're going to keep pursuing it, I presume?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot like in the next sort of 4 years that I'd love to do in sport, and just knowing how incredibly tough it was for me to put everything into preparing for this year, I was pretty much ready to announce it as my final crossing, but I guess you never know.
Yeah, wow. So what is on the Jordan Mercer 4-year sporting goal list, Geordie?
Well, the Coolangatta Gold is an event that since before I qualified for the series, I really wanted to win, and it's still an event that has sort of gotten the better of me from like a pretty young age, giving it a crack, and I would love to win the Coolangatta Gold. And within surf life saving, I also have the goal and dream of winning an Australian Ironwoman title, but aside from that, I'm really enjoying a little bit of stand-up paddling, which is usually my Sunday fun day activity, and I wouldn't mind giving a couple of races a crack with a lot more practice. And also, I think looking ahead 4 years' time to Tokyo, I really like the idea of sort of chasing a kayaking 4-year plan to give myself an opportunity to try for an Olympic sport.
Yeah, fantastic. And I mean, you wouldn't be the first elite Ironman or Ironwoman to make that, to attempt that transition. So that's exciting. What is it about the Olympic appeal that's that would have you potentially pursue that?
Yeah, I think that with all of the sports that I've been a part of in the ocean racing, I feel as though I've made it and I've experienced it at the very top of our sport, and I feel like the respect that is given for Olympic athletes, for maybe the broader community within Australia and the world that don't heavily follow sport, being an Olympian is just a pretty easy way to get respect as an athlete, I feel. And on top of that, it's a new challenge, and for the first time I've felt incredibly inspired and motivated to try for kayaking as a sport. And it's something new, it's something I haven't done before, and it's also pretty exciting knowing that for the first time I'll be racing in an event and training for a sport which is a relatively closed environment in terms with the luck that comes with the elements of being in the surf all of the time. And I feel like training for maybe one discipline would be kind of refreshing rather than training for 4 different sports, which I have done at the elite levels for pretty much 6 years now. So I think just the fact it's something new and being at the Olympics and everything that comes with that experience is something that I've dreamt of being a part of since I was aiming to be an Olympic gymnast.
Yeah, and do you, Geordie, would you see yourself straddling both, or actually going full time, as you said, and just focusing on the one discipline for a period of time to make that, what's at the moment a dream a reality?
Yeah, I definitely think that doing surf life saving and being in my surf ski as much as I am with my Ironman racing would only help my kayaking. So I definitely love to keep racing in the surf and representing Noosa, being with my teammates and the youth that I'm sort of helping and encouraging make their way through there. It's something that I love and has helped keep me motivated and inspired within the sport. But I see kayaking being definitely something that at least 2 years out I would need to solely commit to that, and obviously rely on having the cross training, which I enjoy and love to do at the moment, using that as a bit of a weapon with my kayaking.
Yeah, certainly. And you mentioned, the respect that Olympians receive as athletes, and it's certainly, no matter what nationality or culture, sport, Olympian, everyone automatically, just gravitates the very best of the best. Do you feel at times, Geordie, that the current landscape of professional surf lifesaving sometimes lacks some of that visibility and those respect levels from the sporting community?
Yeah, I think it definitely does, and it's really no one's fault, but it is just, I guess, the ideologies of the broader community and looking at sport. If you're not 100% involved closely, it's hard to understand, and it definitely is. The title of being an Olympic sport and Olympic athlete, it has just that little bit more respect and maybe sort of publicity at those higher levels. But yeah, I definitely think the sport of surf life saving is overlooked in terms of just how difficult it is and how incredible the athletes that are involved are. Yeah, I definitely believe that.
Well, I must say, Geordie, seeing a fresh face like yours go on to win the 2015-16 series, I was on the beach at Cronulla when you took the title, and I really think you bring some star element and power to the sport, which is great. It's it's certainly great for the profile of surf lifesaving, and to have a Victor do a backflip off the podium is pretty cool. And I know there's a lot of juniors that look to as a role model. How do you deal with the expectation that now you're the series champion? The sporting community that follows surf lifesaving in the broader community, I guess now have a view to perform again.
Yeah, it makes me really proud. It makes me proud to know that my actions are looked upon and they help inspire the youth within surf life saving, and that does make me really proud, because I understand that with power and profile comes responsibility, and it's a responsibility that I've never taken lightly. I understand that I'm a role model and I want to make a difference in these young kids' lives, and even the older fans and supporters of our sport. I want to make them happy and I want to inspire them, and I feel like I have a chance to do that through my actions and on the odd occasion where I do get to voice my opinion. But heading into this series, there is obviously more pressure than I've had before, being the series champ and the reigning champ. But pressure is something that I've dealt with unnecessary amounts of from my very first year in the series, and that sort of came from my dad being the champion that he is and that he was within the sport, and from the start, I guess, I was just expected and believed that it was my destiny to be a champion. And what a lot of people probably don't appreciate or respect is that it took a whole lot more work than maybe people may assume.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, the name Mercer is synonymous with surf success here in Australia, and behind any success there's always a whole level of work that, unless you're at the coalface, you just don't necessarily appreciate. So what did your father say to you, Geordie? I was on the beach there and not privy to the conversation, but what was the first thing your dad said when you claimed that series championship down there at Cronulla earlier this year? You remember?
Yeah, well, when it comes to Dad and I, he's a man of very few words. I think that it was also a pretty special time for my dad coaching three of us in the series, with Jack Moyes in the boys, Kirsty Higginson in the girls, who ended up becoming second in the series, and I was first. So really that weekend, I think Dad felt as though he was on top of the world, and he would have been so proud either way these results went. But Brady, actually, he didn't have much to say to me, but I don't think there really needed to be much said. He's lived and breathed the hard work that I've gone through, and there's been moments where I can feel that he wants it just as bad as me, and I feel that that's probably made it harder, I think, for me to finally achieve that big goal, just dealing with expectation and pressure and always being in the media. And I think that I probably, if I could have just escaped under the radar a little bit, maybe these achievements would have come earlier for me. But I definitely am grateful with the way things played out, because it certainly was challenging and it took a very long time. But my goodness, the things I learned along the way, I think it all happened for a reason. I'm so grateful with the way that things played out. And Dad didn't have much to say, but a hug and some tears was just all I needed to know that he felt pretty complete in that moment too.
Well, as a father of, two young girls, I could only imagine. It's funny you mentioned that your father's a man of few words. Fellow series champion Shannon Eckstein. Shannon, mentioned that his most memorable victory was the one Australian title that his father got to see, Billy Eckstein. And I asked Shannon, what did your dad say at the end of that race? And I think Shannon was similar. It was, just well done, but. The moment, the non-verbals, communicated obviously how he was feeling. So there must be something in that for anyone aspiring to win a series championship. Geordie, what would be the one bit of advice you'd give to people looking to perform at their physical best?
Well, I think that it's when you're wanting to perform at your physical best, there's always, for whatever reason, the way our brains are wired, there's always challenges, and it always seems like it's not going to be easy, and it's hard to overcome this and it's hard to overcome that. But I think the biggest thing is just don't take your health for granted. Like your health and your body is a true blessing. And for the days that you don't feel like looking after it as much, and I think it's important just to remind yourself that what you have to work with is an honest blessing. So just make the most of it, because you don't know how good you've got it until it's gone. And I think do what makes you happy, and just appreciate how important it is to look after your body.
Has there been a moment in your career where you haven't had that, your health at your best, that you've had to battle through?
Not on such a big scale, which I'm so grateful for, but pretty close to me. I've had some amazing and influential people in my life that I've seen just have it taken away from them, and it's so confronting, and it's pretty much on my mind whenever little negative thoughts creep in that, how badly these people would wish to be in my shoes. So that's something that always just, I think, keeps my mind pretty clear, and just wanting to make the most of what I've got when I'm out there.
Yeah, great. Red Bull athlete, Geordie. Red Bull's an amazing brand and very aspirational for so many people in the physical performance space. What's the coolest story you've got from your affiliation with the team at Red Bull?
Oh, I've had some pretty incredible opportunities with Red Bull, with the incredible athletes that I've had the chance to come in contact with and work with, and some of them now are just the most cherished friendships that I have. And I think probably my top two with Red Bull, with working with the high performance there, one was a free dive course that I took part in Kona in Hawaii, and that was just probably one of the most incredible weeks of my life. I think one of my biggest fears leading into that and being in the ocean from a young age was getting wiped out, holding my breath for so long that I black out underwater, and it was a big fear of mine that I sort of was still dealing with until this camp. And I ended up holding my breath statically for 4 minutes and free diving 110 feet down. And it was like I conquered a fear, and I honestly felt like I'd unlocked a superpower within that I never knew existed. So that was a pretty incredible sort of experience for me. And my other one, which is probably my top experience, was, I think it was last year or maybe the year before, I was a part of what's called Project Acheron, and it was led by 2 Navy SEALs, and they chose 4 female Red Bull athletes: Tara Geiger, who's a motocross rider from the States, Michelle Parker, who's a big mountain skier, and Greta Eliasson, who does slopestyle skiing. So pretty different sort of realms with characters and very different personalities. But it was, Project Acheron was led by 2 Navy SEALs. The 4 of us girls didn't know what we were in for. We were told to get hiking boots and to set 3 weeks aside in our calendar, and we all agreed to it. And yeah, we ended up being skydiving, dropped into the middle of the Kimberley in like Western Australia, Broome area of Australia, and we were forced to pretty much hike for 12 days and then get on a boat and do some ocean activities in the middle of the ocean. But the whole thing was testing us mentally, spiritually, and physically. And I guess having that fear and the frustration of the unknown, and they pretty much just absolutely rattled our minds, our brains, and sort of got results out of that. And we learned a lot about ourselves and things we wanted to work on. But I can tell you it was a pretty extreme way of extracting that kind of information and knowledge from us.
And you had no idea of any of this happening. You just knew you had to be somewhere at a certain point in time, and off you went.
That's it. That was exactly how it started. So it was just, I really love surprises. Like even as a kid, I've always like enjoyed like surprises, you know, and not being afraid of change. I really enjoy that. So there was an element of it that I really loved, the fact that we didn't know what we were going to do the next day. We didn't know where we were walking, for how long and why. And yeah, I soon sort of got pretty frustrated and fed up with surprises. All I wanted to know was just to have an end goal in mind. And it made me realize how, I guess, goal or achievement orientated I was, that in life I didn't really see a purpose or found it hard to be motivated if I didn't know my work would eventually become something incredible. So it was a pretty tough time for me to sort of come to terms with that. I was stuck in the middle of a 2-week situation where I was tested definitely mentally.
I think that's a really interesting insight you bring up there, Geordie, that, you know, typically athletes, you know, the wiring they've got, the sort of often type A personalities, you know, it's that goal orientation, working towards, you know, something. And from what you described, there was no guiding finish line flag there for you. It was just a drop and survival type test with no real seeming purpose other than surviving.
Yeah, it definitely encouraged me, and it tested me most certainly, but it sort of forced me just to be aware of where I was in each moment of time and to focus on the process of what I was doing rather than the outcome. And looking back 2 years now, it took me a while to, I guess, use all of the things that I learned in Project Acheron. But this year in my maiden series, when I raced at my best and had these breakthrough results because I focused on the process of my racing and what I was doing rather than worrying about expectation or the outcome which I desired.
Yeah, wow, that's powerful. Geordie, who's an athlete, past or present, that you admire greatly? Who'd be the number one on your list?
Well, it was always my dad. Like, I just wanted to be as good as Dad, and looking back now, I think it was also like the person that he is and the person that he was as an athlete. You know, he was kind, he was respectful, he was a good sport, but he worked incredibly hard and he stayed very humble. So I think now looking on, you know, I always looked up to my dad, and now in the past few years, it's been amazing to meet some of the Red Bull girls, and just the way they hold themselves in the world that is today has been amazing. Jess Fox, the slalom canoe, is someone that I've always been inspired by, and more recently, Jamie Mitchell, the Waterman 10-time paddleboard champ, big wave surfer. But at the moment, I am just completely blown away by Tyria Pitt, who just completed the Kona Ironwoman. And if you know about her story, it is just the most humbling story that I've ever heard. And yeah, it's just, I'm honestly like speechless or just so dumbfounded as to her strength and the passion and the resilience that she has to keep doing what she's doing. It's just, that inspires me every day, but I still can't quite comprehend how incredible she is.
And for listeners, could you, in your words, Geordie, just briefly summarise, you know, what it is about Turia Pitt that makes her top of your list, so to speak?
Well, Turia Pitt, I think, I could be wrong with the exacts, but around about 4 years ago, she was just a fit, young, beautiful, healthy young girl who really enjoyed doing adventure racing and things like that. And she was involved in a big endurance adventure race, and there was actually a bushfire. And in short, she had full body burns, and in that stage didn't look like she was going to survive. And now, 4 or 5 years on, she has overcome challenges that I can't begin to imagine in the slightest what they may be like. But if you can imagine full body burns and coming back from maybe not even going to survive and just living day to day, she is now taking on some of the biggest challenges in the world. She's done the Kokoda Trail, and she, just a couple of days ago did the Kona Ironwoman race. So incredible athlete, but my gosh, the strength of character just is second to none.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? The power of perspective, it's such a powerful grounder, isn't it, in life? Geordie, last question. If you could have dinner with 2 people, living or present, so it'd be a table of 3, who would you have on that dinner table and why?
Oh, okay. I might just not put too much thought into it.
Yep.
And I'm going to say Ronda Rousey, the UFC champion. I was just, she's one of her book I read, and at the time I read it, it helped me so much with what I was going through in life and sport. And more than anyone in the world, I'd love to have some training sessions with her. So I guess a good way was I could invite her to dinner and then ask her at dinner for the training sessions.
Or Rhonda, if you're listening to the program.
Please, Rhonda. And the second one, let's see. I might just say Muhammad Ali, because you could sit back and listen to that man all day, and I'd also really like to train with him as well. So Rousey and Muhammad, thank you.
That's a serious table there, Geordie of champions, including yourself. Jordan Mercer, thank you for your time on the Physical Performance Show today, and myself and many of the listeners will be looking forward to seeing you in action again come the 2016, 2017, or really the 2017 series down on the beach in Cronulla, this coming surf series. So all the very best. As a fan of sport, and particularly a fan of surf lifesaving, I want to say congratulations on not only your achievements, but how you go about them, and the interest that you bring to the sport. It's just tremendous. So well done. I think there's many exciting achievements ahead. So we'll have to do a round 2 of this at some point in the future.
I would love that, Brad. And I'll tell you what, athletes like myself are incredibly lucky to have people like you, because without you, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing at the level that we are. So we're grateful for your support and interest in all the crazy things that we're up to.
I'd like you to issue a physical challenge for the week for our listeners. So this can be anything you like that you think will help listeners with their physical performance and their fitness. So any ideas, Geordie, on what this week's physical challenge could be?
Okay, this week's physical challenge, I'm going to make it to grab your shoes and drive, walk or ride to one of your favourite spots and try and get in at least 2 1K runs a week. So if you're starting off with fitness, you could be walking up and down a hill at your favourite beach, or if you're well and truly on your way to running or moving at your best, go for a little bit further, but take yourself to one of your favourite places, put the shoes on and try and get 2 little runs in this week.
Brilliant. So listeners, the challenge has been laid down by Jordan Mercer herself. So Jordy, where can listeners find you on social media? How can they find out more about you?
Well, I am known as Jordan Mercer _1 on most of my social media channels, but I'm pretty avid Instagram user and Facebook, getting a little better, but Jordan Mercer _1 is where you'll find me.
Brilliant. So listeners, if you accept Geordie's physical challenge for the week,
let us know. Drop us a message on social media over on Twitter or Instagram on our handles there at Brad_beer or at Jordan_Mercer1. We'd love to hear about your progress and get in and have a go. So, Geordie, thanks for laying down the gauntlet.
Oh, no worries, guys. I look forward to seeing how you take on the challenge. And I think that, Brad, I'd hate to correct you, but I think it was Jordan Mercer _1.
Oh, that's important. Otherwise, we might start bombarding the other poor Jordan Mercer, right? All right. Well, good stuff.
Thanks again.
Thanks,
care.
Geordie. You're a champ.
Bye.
So, there you have it. I trust you enjoyed episode 29 of the Physical Performance Show featuring Jordan Mercer. What a terrific up-and-coming athlete with such a promising future. Plenty of years ahead for Jordy, I foresee, of dominating surf lifesaving and then potentially into her new vision there for the future in time, which will be the kayaking in Tokyo 2020. Certainly an athlete we'll have to catch up with again on the Physical Performance Show as her story unfolds. Just want to say thanks so much to everyone that's been leaving reviews in iTunes for the Physical Performance Show. It helps enormously in keeping the show more visible for people to see and enjoy. And had a great review that came through, just a couple to share with you. I just wanted to say a big thanks to the following people. Kate Toon, who commented on iTunes, I'm about to embark on a journey back to better health and nutrition. So this is a great find. Can't wait to binge listen rather than binge eat. Thanks, Kate Toon. Thanks so much, Kate. Really appreciate it. And Dr. Jesse Green, a dentist. Jesse said here, I love how Brad unpacks all the aspects of performance with his guests. He's a skillful host and I look forward to each new episode. Great job. Keep it up. Jesse and Kate, thank you both very, very much. Really appreciate it. And listeners, feel free to share the Physical Performance Show around. It literally makes my day when someone either messages me on social media or stops me in my tracks at the practice to let me know that they've just tuned into an episode and they've found inspiring bits from each and every one. I've also had some feedback come through as well to really start to try and get a little bit more into the guests' world in terms of all aspects of performance. So keep an ear out for that as I try and delve a little bit deeper at times into the athletes' stories and also how they get the best out of their physical performance with more depth. So guys, really appreciate it. Have a great week. Tune in next week, episode 30 of the Physical Performance Show. It's a little bit different. It's an episode where I wanted to get on the show a tendon expert. So this is Dr. Peter Malliaris, hailing out of Melbourne, Australia, who, like myself, is a physiotherapist, but Peter splits his time between Monash University, where he leads a faculty there with the physiotherapy team, and his key interest is in tendinopathy or tendon problems of the lower limb. So I really wanted to get Peter on the podcast to unpack some of the mysteries of tendons. If you've ever had a sore tendon that's interfered with your physical performance, you know just how frustrating it can be, and Peter has the cutting edge information that'll help anyone beat a tendon injury. So a little bit of a slight adjustment this week coming on the Physical Performance Show as we feature an expert in their field, Dr. Peter Malliaris. Have a great week, guys. In the meantime, keep pursuing your physical best. This has been the Physical Performance Show, and I'm Brad Beer.